It's safe to say that optics surrounding BioWare are at an all-time low. People just don't trust that BioWare will be able to deliver games on a high-quality level that they once used to be able to consistently, which is why there's just so much writing on their next Dragon Age game, which is their next big release, Dragon Age Dreadwolf. And we've been getting some leaks lately that give us a hint for what to expect surrounding this game in terms of gameplay. They're definitely changing directions when it comes to core mechanics, and whether it's for better or for worse, that obviously remains to be seen, but there are certainly mixed reactions surrounding this change. So this was initially reported by Insider Gaming via an article titled "Exclusive New Details on Dragon Age Dreadwolf Revealed." This was information that sources shared with Insider Gaming, and first of all, apparently this game is not that close to release. A lot of people are hoping it'll come out this year, but the game has been in development since 2015. Since then, it's gone through some overhauls and through some reboots. It seems as though they finally have a solid direction, but it won't fully come to life until likely 2024 is what Insider Gaming speculates based on what sources have relayed. Previous rumors have suggested the game could release in 2023, but that date could be rather optimistic. Sources have said that the game still lacks features, completed character lines, and still contains the remnants of the game's past, referring to the fact that once upon a time, as reported by Jason Schreier, the game was supposed to be a live service type of experience before that idea got scrapped, and the game was pivoted to be a single-player experience, thankfully. But some of the ideas that came about because it was once supposed to be a multiplayer live service type of game was retrofitted into what is now a single-player experience. The game felt a bit like Destiny with a central hub where players could probably regroup before heading into the next mission, said one source about the old version of Dragon Age. And this is an aspect that will play a vital role in Dreadwolf in its single-player format. So there's going to be a main base of operations where you're going to be able to interact with characters and likely build some stuff up and likely will contribute to your progression. But from there, you'll be able to branch out and go to the different missions and map areas of the game, is what it seems like. Alongside that, sources told Insider Gaming that the gameplay loop of this new Dragon Age game will be similar to predecessors in the sense that it will involve recruiting and growing your crew, whom you'll encounter by completing missions. Your recruited crew will populate your hub, where you can give them different pieces of equipment and modifications as you progress throughout the game. It's understood that you'll be able to move from hub to missions by passing through a mirrored portal. So far, things sound like they're not deviating too much from what we normally know from Dragon Age, but here's where the surprising shift in direction comes in. Combat, which apparently is actually more akin to a hack and slash rather than the usual tactical gameplay that involves you controlling multiple party members and directing them. You're going to get an action-adventure game with RPG elements. Insider Gaming's report equates the new Dragon Age's combat wheel to be similar to that of Final Fantasy XV, which is also a game that is an RPG, a JRPG specifically, but has more of an action-oriented, moment-to-moment combat gameplay. And as a result of this, it's looking like Dragon Age Dreadwolf won't allow you to control your crew members, but rather will only allow you to select their abilities to cast during combat. Shortly after the release of that Insider Gaming article, somebody else who claimed to have access to alpha gameplay footage of Dragon Age 4, Dragon Age Dreadwolf, chimed in by revealing what they saw from the footage that they've seen of the game. Apparently, this individual managed to get in contact with a playtester who shared their recorded footage and gameplay of Dragon Age 4 that was in early alpha at that stage, and he actually did provide links to screenshots and video even of that gameplay, so this is looking pretty legit. The links have since been removed. Now, I do have an Imager link that I'll post in the description below that contains all the screenshots and video files that this Reddit user shared. I'm not going to show that in this video because there's a chance of copyright strikes. The screenshots and the short clip that were leaked only encompass a small portion of what was a total of 20 minutes of gameplay that this user saw and got a hold of, set within the Grey Warden Fortress HQ of Weishaupt. The gameplay is alpha, so there isn't a whole lot of detail, and there are missing textures, which further reinforces the likelihood that this game will not come out in 2023, that a 2023 release window is optimistic. This game will likely come out in 2024. It is further detailed here that the player character that the playtester played as is an Elvish Knight class. The character screen actually says they are a mid-level Grey Warden. They've got a sword and a shield, 2 party members alongside them who, again, you cannot control directly, but are able to cast their abilities when you decide to. The objective for this mission that was playtested was to fight through the Darkspawn to get to a library. Also, a big-ass dragon was attacking from above, with the dragon creating occasional environmental and traversal hazards. Then came a face-to-face with the dragon, but that's about when the demo that the playtester played through concluded. But when that segment does become playable, it'll apparently involve trying to chain the dragon up. The Reddit post then goes into the minutia of gameplay details that further corroborate what Insider Gaming reported when they said that the game would be more of a hack-and-slash action-adventure style gameplay for combat. It is stated here that combat is completely in real time and similar to hack-and-slash, and that the reference point for this game's combat was God of War 2018. And if you go to the Imager link that I have in the description box below and check out the short clip, you'll see that there are definitely some similarities there where you see the player character dodging and weaving around while also performing certain attacks and abilities that are all happening in real time, moment to moment. And even the camera perspective, that over-the-shoulder third-person mounted camera, is also very familiar and quite similar to God of War 2018. It is further detailed here that you'll have regular combo attacks alongside abilities and a special bar that when filled up will allow you to perform a special move, some kind of ultimate ability. I don't really understand the comparison to Final Fantasy XV's wheel, says this Reddit user referencing the Insider Gaming article, stating that it's standard Dragon Age ability wheel. It is further corroborated here that there is no party control. You cannot control your crew members directly. You'll likely be able to tell them to execute certain abilities, but that feature wasn't in place during the playtest session. Now, this Reddit user was seemingly impressed by the animation quality of this particular Dragon Age game. Even in its early alpha stage, animation quality has drastically improved from past entries, says this user. Never seen animation quality this good in any BioWare game, so that includes Mass Effect and other IPs that they've worked on. I'll be honest, when I saw the leaked gameplay footage, I thought the animations actually looked kind of janky. But then again, it's still in its early stages, so it's very possible that a lot of refinements will happen on that front. And also, I haven't seen the full 20 minutes of gameplay that this user saw. I only saw a small clip that was a couple seconds long, so it might not be fully representative of the more impressive animations that will be on display and that are currently on display in the early stages of this game's development. And then delving further into moment-to-moment gameplay, it is confirmed here that the playtester's footage revealed that jumping has been retained from Inquisition. Curious as to how important of a role that'll play for world navigation and for combat. And speaking of combat, this Reddit user details how the footage that he saw showed a character with a sword and shield, and with that equipment, one of the things you're able to do is parry attacks from enemies and follow up with counters. As someone who loves parrying in video games, that's a plus for me. And then to close things off, a few smaller details include the fact that this early build of the game has a user interface that's similar to Dragon Age Inquisition, but because it is alpha, we can expect the UI to change. The equipment menu showed that the player character has a chest slot, a helmet slot, a primary weapon slot, a shield slot, or possibly a secondary weapon slot, alongside slots for accessories, one amulet slot, one belt slot, and 2 ring slots. And if you go to the Imager link that is in the description box below, one of the screenshots will show you what that menu looks like. It looks a lot like the equipment menu that many AAA games use nowadays for games that do feature RPG elements and equipment that have statistical effects. Last but not least, it was detailed here that the player character's hair looked glorious. Apparently, this user was impressed by how hair moved and flowed, and enemies were pretty much just variations of Darkspawn. Of course, this is just a small glimpse of what the full game has to offer. So there's a lot that we don't know about the game, but something that has been a topic of contention has been the shift to a more action-oriented combat style. This is something that's been received with mixed reception across social media. Here, for example, when Tom Henderson, who is the owner of Insider Gaming, asked, would you be happy with a hack-and-slash Dragon Age? There are those who have said, no, it's called Dragon Age 2, and I didn't like that. Others are saying, I'd be fine with it. Others are saying, I don't know right now, but as long as it's a good game, I don't care what the combat style is. Some people are happy with the change because for some, the combat in Inquisition was not their cup of tea. For others, they prefer the pure tactical combat experience of Dragon Age that they're used to, so that shift it feels like to them is shifting away from the identity of Dragon Age. But then others are saying that I like combat that's flashy and satisfying, so, I am down for a hack and slash as long as they do it right. When other news outlets began to report on it, plenty of people shared their opinions. Video Games Chronicle here, for example, tweeted about this, and below you'll see people talking about the comparison to God of War. Others saying that this is actually a cool change. That's a small glimpse. Hopefully YouTube won't catch that, or the folks at BioWare won't catch that. Here's somebody just saying boo. Others saying I just don't care if they change the playstyle of the game as long as the game is fun. So opinions really vary across the board. Not that adopting this gameplay is necessarily bad, but I think Dragon Age has always struggled with its identity. That's true. Dragon Age 2 had a very different style of combat from 1 and Inquisition, and them making such a drastic change is a bit surprising. I thought they'd stick to the stuff that did work about the predecessors. But I'm very curious to see how this plays out. But others are saying that given Dragon Age Inquisition's success, it should be used as a point of reference. Well, there's one user pointing out that Inquisition was the most successful launch in BioWare's history, so making the change to a format that is unrelated to the genre that Dragon Age is usually associated in, it is believed that that's not what Dragon Age fans want. That's what's implied through this sarcastic remark. Here's another comment section underneath the tweet here by Okami Games, where people are saying things like, sounds like a very different game than what we fell in love with. Others are saying that I hope this is not the direction Dragon Age goes in, a more God of War style combat. I enjoy the party control and tactics of Dragon Age 1 through 2. Hack and slash, no party control inspired by God of War 2018. That's not Dragon Age, some people are saying. So there are definitely a lot of sentiments that are expressing concern that while it might still turn out to be a good game, is it really going to be Dragon Age at the end of the day? And some people have pretty strong sentiments to share on that front, with this user saying that this is as good as destroying what made the Dragon Age series great. Doesn't really sound like Dragon Age game then, and these are getting plenty of likes and whatnot. But again, it's not a universal sentiment. Some people are curious to see what sorts of new avenues and doors this shift to a more hack and slash God of War style combat will pave the road to. Others are saying, I don't care as long as the game's good. But then there are those who are drawing a hard line, saying that if the combat is inspired by God of War 2018 and isn't really Dragon Age, then it's a hard pass. No party control seems to be a really big sticking point for many. So yeah, that's the general discourse going on around the internet. For me personally, it's hard to judge until I see more of the game in action. That couple seconds long clip that has been leaked just isn't enough to really give me a glimpse of whether this feels like Dragon Age. And even if the combat is radically different, there's still a chance that this will be a good game, and there have been RPGs that have been done well with a more action-oriented combat. When we think about a game like Dragon's Dogma, that's a game whose combat system has this blend of like Devil May Cry light with like Shadow of Colossus with the ability to climb monsters and stuff. That is an RPG game whose combat you can definitely call hack and slash, but it's still beloved among many because people enjoyed that combat and all the different facets that surrounded it that made the game memorable. And even games like Soulsborne titles whose combat is more action-based, more real-time, more moment-to-moment skill-based, or games like, Elder Scrolls and Fallout whose combat do happen in real time, all of those can still ultimately be considered RPGs because the elements that surround the combat do capture the elements of what it is to be a role-playing game rather than an action game with some RPG elements. And when you think about something like Mass Effect, that's very much a game where the combat is third-person shooter for the most part, with some tactical elements like the ability to tell party members, crew members who are accompanying you to use certain abilities at certain times. That's a game where you couldn't directly control your party members, but the party members still had uses contributed to combat, and you could command them on some level, and that's a series that people really love. So it sounds like Dragon Age Dreadwolf is going the Mass Effect direction, except instead of being a third-person shooter, it is going to be a fantasy hack-and-slash combat-based game with tactical elements that are more akin to Mass Effect, where you're not commanding your party members directly, you're not controlling them directly, but are able to utilize their abilities for tactical purposes, is what I'm hoping for at the very least. Some tactical element has to be retained in the new Dragon Age. So I don't think that combat shifting to resemble something along the lines of God of War 2018 is going to be the make or break aspect of this game. As long as the lore, the world building, the story, the characters, the moment-to-moment interactions, and your agency in the story, those role-playing aspects still shine through, as long as it still feels like a BioWare game on that front, then I think they'll be able to get away with this shift in combat that may potentially prove to be advantageous for this new entry. of course, it's hard to say at this point. Though at the same time, there's a part of me that does believe that the more tactical combat that allows you to control party members and really command the battlefield and all of these different aspects, I'd be lying if I said that that wasn't a big part of what I identify Dragon Age with. And so part of me does feel a little let down that that iconic aspect of Dragon Age gameplay won't make it into Dragon Age Dreadwolf, assuming that these reports are true, and they seem to be true based on how legitimate the leaks look. But for now, until I see more of the game in action, I wouldn't say that this change in combat is going to make me count this game out immediately. I hope that this change is ultimately beneficial for the direction that they're going for with this one. Maybe this style of combat will draw in more people to the IP, or newcomers who maybe didn't partake in Dragon Age because the tactical gameplay is not their thing. Maybe they'll want to engage with Dragon Age Dreadwolf. But hopefully, even with this new combat, they're still able to capture aspects of the essence of Dragon Age, not just in terms of the story and the world building and the characters and all these things, but also the gameplay has to, on some level, feel like Dragon Age. But if they're mostly dispensing with the tactical elements, and it's going to be more akin to how Kratos and Atreus can fight together, and you can share in Atreus' abilities or your companion's ability, if it's going to be more like that, at the very least, I hope they absolutely nail that combat. Something like God of War set the standards high, so Dragon Age, if they're going to focus on this style of combat, they have to really make it feel and play good. It has to be tactile, it has to be precise, and it has to feel satisfying for this shift to work. But that's one man's take. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on these Dragon Age Dreadwolf leaks, and whether it makes you more optimistic for the game or more pessimistic for the game. Would you look forward to a gameplay style, or at least a combat style, that's more akin to God of War 2018? Or would you have preferred that they stick with a traditional, more tactical Dragon Age gameplay? And generally, are you willing to give this combat transformation a chance, or do you draw a hard line there? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.